was like the perfect song, and you let us sing along. Now you're gone, but your spirit soars in our hearts forevermore.
Hi, welcome to I Pressed On, taking the word depression and changing it around with a more positive approach. I'm Brian Chrysagas, and this is my co-host Barbie Segaris, and we are thrilled that you joined us today.
So this is Cleo Coney that's with us today. And Cleo, you and I have been friends for almost 40 years. I don't know if we're that
Don't tell
old,
anybody
but
I'm that old.
we're not that old. But going back when I first met you, you were modeling and you were working retail and you were skateboarding on the side and
Right.
through St. Petersburg, Florida. And then from there, you went on to radio, TV production, car sales, magazines, you name it.
A little bit of
But
everything.
you've done a lot in your short 40 years that I've known you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm originally from New Mexico. My dad was in the Air Force 21 years, traveled around the globe. We lived in Europe, a lot of different places. And we came back to New Mexico, and then he wanted to come to Florida, where he was from, and settle
Mm-hmm.
down. And he was an aircraft mechanic, and he started teaching turboprop uh, repair and jet engine repair in Clearwater. And one day he asked me to help him friend move, and I went along, and that's when I got my first skateboard. The lady gave me her old skateboard with clay wheels on it, and that's how I
Wow,
got into it.
Oh, wow.
I love that. I understand, like all of us, you've had your challenges because I know I have. And you can't live 40 years without some challenges in life. But could you tell us some of those challenges and how you learned how to cope with them and what got you through?
Yeah, one of the first things was when I was in my prime in skateboarding. I was getting ready for a big contest in California, but I was in Florida practicing, and I said those fatal words after skating all day: "Is let me do the routine one more time." And
Oh.
at the end of the routine, I do a flip, and when I landed backwards, my knee gave out, and
Oh
so I
my
had to
gosh.
have surgery. I had to have surgery, and
Oh,
so
wow.
that took me out of kind of took me out of competition for a long time because I had dual feeling on each side of my knee, and I didn't have full strength for a long time, uh, and that kind of took me back. So I just had to sit back and suck it up, and just try to go forward and stay involved, keep skating. But I just wasn't at this. I wasn't the same level after that injury. But thank goodness my parents were real strong, and they told me, don't worry about that. There's a lot of things you can do. But I never gave up skating.
Wow, that's wonderful. Yeah, I understand your father was in the Air Force.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank God. Thank God for men like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Thank you
he
for
was a
his
serious,
service.
serious, serious man. Rest in peace. Now, one of the first over in Vietnam. He told me a lot of things. He'd have nightmares sometimes, but people like my dad and Barbie's dad really made a difference
Yes,
in my life. And I
that's
know in
wonderful.
Barbie's life too. You know.
Well, you
Yeah,
guys moved
yes,
around a
definitely.
lot as a child, didn't you? Because of that, how
Yes,
did you
sir.
deal with that?
You know, it can be tough sometimes, especially being the only black kid in class or the new kid all the time. And so you had
Yes.
to learn
Mm-hmm.
how to adapt, you know. And so you go to places you weren't expecting to experience things a certain way, and
Mm-hmm.
you know you run into that, and it was hard, but it made you stronger as a kid, you know.
Yes. Cleo, you were sharing that you were one of the first black people in that area. Uh, can you tell us, was there a lot of racism that in those days?
Yeah, I mean, when you least expected it, But I experienced it in the schools first from both sides. I mean, coming
From
from a
both sides.
military family, you're on blade bases with people. Everybody got along. People were from
Wow.
everywhere. Asia, Europe, Africa, different
Yes.
places. It was just a common thing. Everybody worked together in school to try to answer questions and get good grades. But when I came here, it was a completely different story. And this is in the 70s. And people would get mad if you try to answer a question. They want to fight you after
Really?
school, call you
Wow.
names. Yeah. So it was just, it was new to me. I hadn't experienced that before. It was an
Right.
ugly thing. It still exists in parts of this country, but it's just really surprising. People need to get out of their bubbles and meet new
Yes.
people and try new foods, listen to different music, because we got more in common, than people realize. You know what I
Amen.
mean?
Amen to
Yes.
that.
Everything
Yes.
else, you know. But
Now, how
it was
did you deal
difficult.
with that? Did you just press on? Or did you push forward? Were you kind to everybody, or what did you
Yeah,
do?
I did because my parents were pretty strict, and I didn't want. Sometimes I didn't even want to tell them because I knew that would escalate stuff because they would get really
Yes,
upset. I
I'm
would just
sure.
try to make sure I was never, if I could help it, in the vicinity or in the mix of something going either way because I didn't want to be,
Yes.
because I'd get in trouble at home. My dad, he believed in tighten you up. You got a bad grade, you know, take them skateboards away if you got a C. Why you get a C in this class? What you got a good excuse for that? Put the
Yeah.
skateboard away. So
Yes.
it was very focused. My sister, my middle sister, she went to Harvard. Uh, my younger sister, she's one of the top accountants up in DC at a law firm. Eldest sister used to work for some government agencies, DIA and things like that. So it was instilled us early to try to achieve and better yourself uh, through education and just through helping other people, mentoring and things like that. But
That's beautiful.
you have time for fun too.
Yeah, I remember, when I was teaching school, Cleo, you would always come and talk to my students, and that was a huge help because some of the kids in the class that felt different or inferior or, you would come in and, talk to them and show them your skateboard, but also talk about your education. And I just always wanted to say that that meant the world to me that you did that for me.
It
So
was a lot of
thank you.
fun teaching those kids, and I enjoyed the photos or the drawings they did of me later with the
Yes.
best people I've
Yeah,
ever
because we
seen.
had them. Yeah, we had them write thank yous. The kids wrote thank yous
That's
to
awesome.
him, and yeah,
Yeah, anytime you asked, I tried to be there. No matter what the school was, and your
right.
friend Susan too. I think had me at a couple times for creative writing.
Now, if there was one thing that you could change in your life, what would that be?
Man, I don't think I could change one thing because all those experiences really made me who I am today. I mean, if you think about little things I did, singing in a boys' choir, singing in operas as a little kid, Tosca and Carmen, uh, you know, uh, just on the skateboarding. It's taken me to a lot of places, meet a lot of people. Uh, There's a little bit of surfing, uh, but the arts, things like that, creating graphics, the travel, um, just a lot of things like that really combine, to make me a little more well rounded, and that led to those little stints I did, little extra things I did in the movies and stuff. Like you remember John Candy, Summer Rental?
Yeah,
Yes,
he was one of my
Summer
favorites.
Rental. Yes,
I
they
was I
they
was an extra in
filmed
one of
that.
that movie, Cop and a
Yeah,
Half.
Madeira
Oh, Cop
Beach.
and a
Cop
Half.
and a Half with
Oh, with
Burt
Burt Reynolds.
Reynolds
Yeah,
was
I was
filmed in
in
I
that.
love
Tampa.
that too.
Yes,
Yes.
Did the Danced in Cocoon. Uh,
yes.
Amateur Night. It was a movie called Amateur Night that was shot in Ybor City. We didn't know at the time it was for the Mexican market. American market. Everything was dubbed later, but I was a break dancer in that. And from that gig, I got a gig in a breakdance video, how-to video.
Uh-huh.
And you look at it now, it's really corny. But it was shot at the University of Tampa uh, over a week period. And then from that, I got a lead on a job at Channel 10. That's how I got to Channel 10. Learned production and became the floor director for the Murphy in the Morning Show. And that's a guy I think you should talk to in the future because we had all kind of guests on his show that I met, from like Bob Hope to JJ Wall, all kinds of people.
Oh my
So
gosh, love Bob Hope.
Yeah.
Bob Hope.
uh, a lot of the people that are on that show now, people don't know who they are,
Don't know
but
who they
Yes.
are. Yes, that's true.
but it was a
But
good
we
experience.
know.
Now, because this is a show about depression and pressing on, no matter what your struggle is, whether it's depression, whether it's struggling with racism or struggling with whatever, divorce or whatever, what would you tell somebody if they're trying to get into the business like you were, and they're having some struggles because they feel they're not good enough, or they're being put down, or maybe there is some racism going on? Would you tell them, what would you say so that they don't give up?
That's a good question, because a lot of people do get turned off if the first no you get, and it's from somebody who that has a grudge against you or
Yes.
grievances, no apparent reason.
Hmm.
Don't worry about it, because there are so many more doors to be open. You just learn from it, and you just keep going. You go to the next one, then you go to the next one, and you go to the next one, and you got to get a number of no's before you get the yes. You don't always get the yes right away.
That's right. That's
It
so
doesn't
true.
happen.
Yep.
Each
Yeah.
no is a building block, and it strengthens you so that you're
I
ready.
love
And then
that.
Yeah, it's true.
Barbie and I have a friend named Rodney, and when I was working in Channel 44, he was at Channel 28, and he's like, "Man, we need to go to New York and try our hand at acting." And I had too much responsibility. I couldn't. I said, "Man, I can't go." He goes, "Man, let's go. Let's do it." I said, "No, I can't. I can't." So he went up there, and he lived out of his car, and he
Yep.
showered at the YMCA.
Wow.
And one day at a Go See for a Kentucky Fried Chicken commercial, he got the part, one of the
Wow.
parts. And that catapulted him, because they showed it, back in the days, you got paid a rate for every time it showed, because every time it showed, you're working.
Yes. Yes.
And I don't know how many thousand times they showed the commercial in the Southeast United States, Northeast, moved around, but it helped elevate him, and he got some other gigs and ended up on the soap opera. What was the name of it?
Right. Well, he was in Passions, but
Passion.
he
He was in
also was in Young and the Restless.
Young and the
And
Restless.
recently he was on Bold and the Beautiful. So, yeah,
Oh,
Rodney
wonderful.
Van Johnson.
He
Yeah.
also,
And then he was also on the OWN channel, on Oprah's OWN channel. He was in a series on there called Bringing Up
Whitney.
Whitley.
Whitley.
Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
also played the boyfriend of Diana Ross's daughter on, was it Sisters or something? A show called Sisters or something?
Yes.
And
Yes.
he was the character on there, but they padded him up so he had real big hips, because that was supposed to be one. Now, he's somebody's perfect example who didn't give up.
Right.
Just
Oh,
kept
that's a beautiful story. There was a story, I don't know if you remember Burt Reynolds and Clint Eastwood, but those were two heroes of mine growing up. I thought Burt Reynolds was one of the good-looking guys, and Clint Eastwood, what a great actor and such a strong individual. But they almost didn't really
Didn't
become
do.
famous. They were cast. They went to casting agents, and Burt Reynolds said that they had said that Burt was a terrible actor. And they said, "You'll never make it in this business." And as for Clint, they told him, "You have an Adam's apple. That's just terrible. You will never make it." So then they had walked out of that place, and Bert had a smile on his face. And Clint said, "What are you smiling about? We both got negative responses." He said, "Well, I could always learn how to act, but you're stuck with that Adam's apple."
Can't get rid of that.
Yes,
You see how wrong those people were?
Yes.
absolutely.
Well, Brad Pitt too. Brad Pitt lasted 1 week on Young and the Restless, and they fired him because they said he didn't know his lines and he was a terrible actor.
Really?
Yes.
So you never really give
yeah,
up.
So you never give up. You never know.
Yes.
And
'Cause
Steve
you never know who
Harvey.
you're with. Steve Harvey, same
Right.
thing.
Yeah, Steve Harvey lived out of his car. He was
I
going
saw
from
something
comedy
today,
club to
too.
comedy club.
I saw something the other day, Barbie, that they were mentioning, your skills and your talent may not be appreciated where you're at. You have to go to where you appreciate it. And sometimes that puts you away, and then you end up building your reputation or a history of doing things. Now you're accepted where you're from, A lot of times
Right.
where you're from, you're just that kid down the street, and you don't get them that chance.
Well,
Right.
that's a great. Actually, the Bible has talked about that. They said a prophet's never welcome in their own hometown, and it's true because they just take you for granted. So that's a very good way of looking at it.
Cleo, tell me, how did you become a skateboarder Hall of Fame? What was the process that you had to go through to get your position there?
I got inducted in 2011 in the Florida Skateboard Hall of Fame by my peers. You don't know you're even being nominated. You just
Okay.
get an email that says, "Hey, congratulations, you've been nominated, and
Nominated.
by your peers to be into and be inducted to the Florida Skateboard
Mm-hmm.
Hall of Fame." Uh, I skateboarded for so long. You know, some of it might be longevity, but some of it's what I've been doing with the magazine over the
Mm-hmm.
years and trying to promote East Coast skateboarding, because the West Coast had all the publications, they had everything, but
Wow.
the East Coast guys never really got any oomph. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I was in a number of contests in my youth. I rode for Gordon and Smith for a while. I rode for a company called
Mm-hmm.
Vision and Tracker Trucks, and
Wow.
competed head to head with a lot of people. Our ramp we had in St. Petersburg, Florida. See, at one time, all the skateboard parks disappeared in the United States, except for a couple of them. And so everybody went to backyard ramps, and we had backyard ramp series contests like that. And through that, we people came from California and Canada and other places. Even Tony Hawk came to our house, John Grigley's house, actually, but it's my home ramp, twice to compete in his youth. And he
That's
won
amazing.
one contest and got $150 first place. you know, so it's just being there and being a part of it for so long. People wanted me
Well, you
recognized.
don't just pick up a skateboard and be good, because you have to study. How many hours did you spend? Because I'm thinking I can't. I get on a skateboard. I can't do it. There's no way possible. I always wanted
you
to, believe me, but it was never in my no balance
just
whatsoever.
you just start slow. Of course, like I said earlier, I got the wooden skateboard with clay wheels early on, and then uh, I ran that up and down the sidewalks forever, making all kinds of noise. I wore the wheels all the way down, but over time I got better boards, and it took up a lot of time that maybe I would be getting into something else. You
Yeah.
know,
Right.
focus on
Mm-hmm.
skateboarding, whatever you can get the kids to do: skateboarding, surfing, football,
That's a
basketball, whatever.
That's actually wonderful, because our kids today, they get into trouble because they don't have things to do. They should take up skateboarding. I mean, that or something.
It
Or any
really helps. It
Yeah.
sport.
really helps. Yeah, it really helps if you can get them off the video games long enough. But
Mm-hmm.
it's that physical activity, that interaction with their counterparts. We were always trying to
Right.
push to get better. We were trying to learn new tricks. We wanted to be recognized for what we did. And so after school, whether it was middle school or high school, I was on the ramp 4 to 6 hours a day. Sometimes my parents would come, "Hey, you got to come home now." And so
Mm-hmm.
I come, and so
You know,
you just keep
they were
going.
sa- yeah, they were saying with the hurricane that just happened in our area in Florida that there was no electricity for in some places for 2 weeks, and so kids could not get on their gaming, and so they had to go outside, and they met kids in their neighborhood that they didn't even know, and they were actually outside playing, riding their bikes, and getting to know the other kids in
That's
their
beautiful.
neighborhood like we did when we were young kids.
I know that
So,
when I had it, I didn't have electricity for a month. Okay, and I started feeling like Little House on the Prairie, because I started appreciating the small things of life.
The things you take
And
for
I,
granted.
yeah,
the things we take
absolutely.
for
And I'm
granted, yeah.
thinking, what? How did I do it as a child? Because we
Yeah.
didn't have the phones, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have, we were not every channel out there. Look how many channels we had. Now, when we were kids, we had 3 channels, I think.
Yeah.
That's it.
And yeah, so it's difficult to understand how did we do it, but we need to go back to that, because people sit at their table instead of sharing with each other and communicating. They're on their phones where their parents and them are eating. It's disgusting.
Exactly. You're
Yeah. Our parents
absolutely
would have
right.
never let that happen.
No, no. My father, I was the remote control. Cleo,
Yeah.
no, going to change the channel. And then the one UHF channel. I had to go, Cleo, go up there, move the antenna. No, move it left, move it left. Hold it right there. Hold it right there. And
Yes.
the TVs were basically a piece of furniture. They were so big. Grandma's
Yeah.
house, her TV, you couldn't go in the good room. That's had the plastic over the furniture, and then you had to the Zenith, the big Zenith television. They also had like a
Yes.
stereo
Yeah.
box. You couldn't go in there, but
That's
yeah,
wonderful.
The good old days.
good
The
old
good old
days.
days.
Yes.
So if any of these, if anybody wanted to get a hold of you or follow you or see your magazine, where can they find that information?
Yeah, they can go to Instagram and go to CB Skate SK numeral 8 MAG. So it's CB Skate Mag. Letter C, letter B, letter S, letter K, numeral 8 MAG. And there's some videos on there, a little skateboard history on there, and some of the events I cover, like the Surf Expo. Twice a year I go there and cover that event. And I'm also tied into the Florida Athletic Skateboard League, which is FASL. There's also one in California called Castle, and we help push the amateurs with a competition, get more girls into skate. If you can, check out Grind for Life, a guy named Mike Rogers, he's a 2-time cancer survivor,
Oh
and
my
Oh, wow.
gosh.
he skates with one eye, monovision.
Oh my goodness.
And what
We need
he
to get him
does,
on the
Oh,
show.
yeah.
well, I can help you with that. And
Excellent.
he helps families find places to stay when they're getting cancer treatment. So any donations to him, the Grind for Life is an awesome thing. So
That's
.org,
wonderful.
grindforlife.org if you want to look into it.
Awesome.
But other than that, yeah.
Now, do you think you'll ever teach kids how to skate or like skateboard and stuff,
Hey,
or
right now, I help some kids get skateboards. Sometimes I always listen for somebody in a store or whatever. They need a skateboard or mama, and I have access to some skateboards that I can, slide a skateboard to a kid because I always wanted
oh
good
my
stuff
gosh,
to get. It took a while to get good stuff. I know what it's like to beg your dad, mom for money or
that's beautiful.
cut grass.
So
You know what I mean?
you're Santa Claus.
Don't tell
Okay, we'll just be quiet about that one. But now I know who the real Santa is.
Oh, damn it.
Do
But
you
yeah,
still skate yourself now
I
at
was
your
skating
age?
the day before.
You
Yes.
were. Yeah.
Down where I'm at now in Sarasota, as a matter of fact. Yeah. Just
Wow,
brush
good
a
for
little bit of dust off.
you.
Brushing some of the dust off.
Yeah, well, good for
That's
you.
wonderful. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today because we've
Hey,
run out of time. But you are such a blessing. We'll have to have you back sometime. But we're going to be looking you up and cheering you on and checking out that magazine. But before we
Yeah.
leave, we always like leaving people with some kind of positive message at the very end of the show. And this is something that I love. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Would you agree?
I agree. 100%.
Amen. Well, until next time, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Cleo, for being our guest. And let's all press on. Amen.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Thank you, Cleo, for being my friend
welcome.
for so many years. I love you. Love you,
Likewise.
Cece.
Likewise. Hey, y'all take care of them.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Until next time, God bless you all. Your life was like the perfect song, and you let us sing along. Now you're gone, but your spirit soars in our hearts forevermore. You lived each day with fierce resolve. You shared God's love and hearts evolved. Though you've left, we feel your grace. Echoes linger in this place. Gone but not forgotten, no. You showed the way for us to go. A legacy that shines so bright, guiding us through darkest night. Through tear-filled eyes we seek the dawn, strength to stand when hope is gone. Now the world has lost its star, but you remain here in our hearts. When I'm in your presence, kneeling at your feet, I hear you speaking to my heart about all your plans for me. Jesus, you're the master. Oh, I'm at your beck and call. There's so much I could do in life, Lord, but Jesus most of all. Oh, I wanna be used by you more than anything else I do. Oh, I wanna be used by you. Oh, and I wanna lend a helping hand. I wanna be the best I can. Oh, I wanna be, oh, how I long to be, Father. I wanna be used by you.
To get your Fearless to Follow CD, visit chrisaugustministries.com and click on Shop. For more information about I Pressed on podcast, visit chrisaugustministries.com. Find out who our next guests will be, as well as airtimes and dates. Please consider making a donation. Your donation helps fund all of the ways we spread God's word and testimony.